This is Hobby Beekeeping. I'm Hank Speck at Wildflower Bee Farm. In this podcast, I'll review what's happening on our farm, talk about different strategies that we can do as we enjoy and love working with our bees. This is Hobby Beekeeping. I'm Hank Speck. Let's get started. Welcome to this edition. It's April 13th, 2026. 95% survival to 95% dead outs. What the heck happened? Well, there's an initial period, when you go through and you look at, that's on the farm here. When you go through and look at your hives and you see hives that didn't make it over the winter, and there's an immediate emotional feeling of, I really screwed up, or what did I do wrong? And the worst thing you can do is get on social media and you see all these people say, well, you should have done that, stupid, or you didn't do that, you didn't wrap them, you didn't do this treatment, whatever. None of that matters, and this podcast is really about why. It's not about justifying anything or, getting me off the hook, because the first week I kind of had a feeling, if you've been listening to the podcast, that we were going to have trouble and it was going to be difficult, but here's what happened. So this was our fifth year of treatment-free, and we had a scruffy hive strain that had been surviving. And so last year when we came out of the winter with 95% survival, it was pretty jacked up, but short-sighted, because I split the hives, which is fine, and one of those splits from the scruffy hives survived this past winter, and none of the other hives did, regardless of the configuration, regardless of when they were treated. I had hives, obviously the 2-framers weren't going to make it, the 4-framers probably not, the 5-framers rarely, so I had, forget all the research hives, I call them. I had about 15 what I would call conventional hives, primarily in 10-frame double deep or single 10-frame deeps. I had a few 8-frame doubles, but that was it. All of the 7 swarms that came in last year didn't make it. And so when you look at what happened, here is what's really important to think about. There has been a great deal written about how one thing doesn't kill our bees, and I totally agree, unless it's a bear or a raccoon, or you drive over it or a tree falls on it, whatever. Other than that, it's what I call diathesis stress. And I want to explain it again, because this data, even though it's painful from our farm, actually helps prove this theory. And I'm going to be going through and telling you at the end what we're working on now for the science of it. But the first thing that happens is we go through our hives, and and really avoid this. If you get on social media, they say, well, if your bees' heads are stuck in a cell when they died, obviously they needed food and they couldn't see the food that was right beside them, and blah blah blah. Or you had mites, or you had a virus, or whatever. What you see at the end, I would predict 99% of the time, isn't the reason or the combination of factors that led to the impact of your bees. So last year, when we had a 95% survival rate, remember, we have roughly 40 acres of wildflowers and tree and all kinds of grasses and so on planted, and we also have about 10 acres of forest. And so the buffer of that incredible food can overcome a lot of the stress, what we call diathesis stress, that allows the bees to overcome what's happening out there, because the combination of stress factors, including poor air quality, exposure to some pesticides, the genetic piece, varroa mites, some deformed wing virus, whatever may be out there, we know bees can survive with that stuff if a lot of other good things are going on. And it looks like this past year, not just the winter, but the past year, because the winter is, in my opinion, is an indication of what the bees were already destined to have happen to them. So if you say something like, well, I had too small a cluster, that may be the last thing that did them in, or the final piece that caused them to die over the winter. But the question is, why was there a small cluster? What happened? And it's usually a combination of things. In our case, we had all kinds of things happening with weather, plus 3 of the toughest, poorest air quality months in the foraging season I've ever seen, because we collect that data on the farm here. I'm not saying that caused the problem. Likely it was a minor piece, but it could have been the addition of that to the usual cast of characters that led to the failure. Now, I'm going to do the quote autopsies today and go through, and mainly to see if they have honey, because that's an easy one to look at. But that in itself doesn't tell you anything, because let's assume for a moment there's some hives that don't have any honey. You could argue and say, well, that's why they died. Well, that's not true. The question is, why don't they have enough honey? Perhaps the queen wasn't laying properly. There wasn't enough population because she had been exposed to something, combined with stresses, combined with the cold in the winter, combined with this, combined with that, led to failure. Now remember, it's a microclimate per hive, per apiary combination of factors. So you could have a hive half a mile away survive because you have a different apiary than one that you have over here, and you try to make summary conclusions. So what I'm trying to say about all this is this. The downside is when it happens, we internalize it, it becomes personal, people criticize the way you keep bees. None of that matters. What matters is you have a checklist in your brain. You've done it the same way. When the 95% survived, same strategy as when the 95% this past year did not survive. So the strategy was the same. Here's the thing. We're now able to take the data from the non-survivors, and that data is the video clips we collected last year, and we can compare them to the video clips of our survivor hive. And we can say, okay, we don't know how far the survivor hive will go. It may fail in the next 2-3 weeks. I don't know, but it came out of the winter, and it looks weak to me. But our scruffies always look weak early in the spring. They don't even, I remember opening them up a few years ago, and there were no eggs for the first month of April, like nothing. And then all of a sudden the queens took off, the 2 scruffies that had survived that cycle. So if this one hive does make it and continue to grow, we're going to be able to do maybe 1, maybe 2 splits, maybe none, maybe just let them swarm and not mess with them. I'm going to go in and see if they need a frame of honey, because I have some clean honey frames, and just give them 1 in case, just to protect that genetics. But even that I don't want to do. So I can then compare, and this is what we'll be doing on rainy days, all the data on drones, pollen bees, and overall bee as a percentage, and compare, is there any trends we're seeing, particularly in the month of July, because I believe that's the killer month after the summer solstice. Because by the time you get into August and September, everything's already established. It's the spring, and we have data on that as well, up until about June. And then we get into July, and things are pretty much settled. So we're going to look at that data and see what we can find. But it certainly helps with us better understanding and some data to look at diathesis stress as the reason hives make it or don't. In this case, stress is attributed to a whole host of factors. And we saw them last year in our climate, in our rain, in our forage issues, and all of that. Now think about it. We're talking about a 40-acre wildflower field that's designed for bees. So there's lots of food going into the fall, goldenrod everywhere. Now the question is, what was the quality of that goldenrod with the rain we received and all those other things? Don't know. So I'm going to be going out today and going through some of the boxes. Next week I'll give you some of the outcomes. Said, hey, and it's still difficult, even though it is what it is. Also, depending on the wind and the temperature, I'll do a quick open of the survivor and pop in a frame if that's needed, and I'll report to you back then. So diathesis stress. So if you lost some bees, take a deep breath. As long as you have the regular things checked, the regular boxes checked, regardless of how you keep bees, it's highly likely it was diathesis stress and a combination of factors that led to what's called threshold, meaning that's the point where the bees don't make it. And it was the combination of stressful factors that probably led to that. I'm Hank for Hobby Beekeeping. All the best and have an amazing day.